Hello learners, welcome to this session on WTO and Doha round. This particular topic is related with your course MEC 007, which is part of MA Economics program, second year course. This is a compulsory second year course, and today we will be discussing on WTO, its origin, and all those related issues, the WTO related issues, and specifically on Doha round. So if you have any queries regarding this, or if you have anything, you can just call us, and you can mail us also, and my mail ID I will be telling you about this. This is mbala@ignou.ac.in. If you have any questions or any queries, you can mail me after this session also. So let us start now the session. So today we will be discussing WTO and Doha round, and what all issues we will be discussing. I'll give you an overview of that in this. We will be, to begin with, we will get to know, or we will understand what is WTO, what is the origin of WTO, and you must have heard about, in your course also you must have read about GATT and WTO. So we will get to know that is there any difference between GATT and WTO, or is it the same thing? And what was GATT? If this is a different thing, what was GATT? And what is the history of GATT and WTO as such? The difference between GATT and WTO? Who can be a member of WTO? What are the agreements that WTO administer? Principles of WTO trading system. How do WTO affect our lives, especially in developing countries? We have seen every day, you must be reading newspapers, that WTO has taken this decision, WTO, the different countries have come to a different kind of agreement under WTO, and I mean, people, this is affecting lives of people in one way or the other. So what kind of effects it is having on the life of the people, we will be discussing that also. And then there is a criticism of WTO, whether in developing countries you must be hearing about whether wherever the different rounds of WTO are taking place, whether it is Seattle, whether it is Hong Kong or Doha, or wherever it is, you must have read about that many NGOs, many activist organizations, they were criticizing WTO. Why they were criticizing WTO? We will learn about that also in this session. And then we will have a journey from Doha to Hong Kong. What are the issues for South Asia? So to begin with, what is WTO? WTO, that is, you must be knowing, WTO is World Trade Organization. This is an organization which is made up of a group of countries. So how many countries these are? These are 148 member countries, and about 30 plus countries are applying to join this WTO organization. Now what are the main functions of WTO? Its main function is to ensure that trade between nations flows smoothly, predictably, and freely as possible. What does it mean? It means that as long as the trade between any of the two nations or a group of nations is taking place, it is without any kind of difference or without any kind of countries are not differentiating between country A or B or C. Now suppose A and B are trading, these two countries are trading, so B, and if a C country also comes in between, the A country which is exporting its commodities to B, it will not differentiate between B and C. So that the flows are between all A, B and C are smooth, predictable. I mean, predictable, we mean that it can easily be said that what kind of trade will be taking place, on what basis, what will be the terms and conditions of trade. So these are fairly well defined rules and regulations under WTO. So WTO takes care of all these things. Now what is the origin of WTO? WTO came into being in 1995. It was in Doha that WTO came into being. But WTO, it was not that it originated just in 1995. It has a long history behind it. WTO has evolved over the years, almost a history of 50 years, as the successor of GATT. GATT, what does GATT? It stands for General Agreement on Tariff and Trade. Now this GATT is not an organization like WTO. GATT is, as the name itself makes it very clear, GATT is General Agreement on Tariff and Trade. This was a kind of agreement between, or I should rather say among all the countries, that they will agree on certain terms and conditions on which basis their trade will take place, and this will be a kind of agreement only. It was not an organization, and there was no kind of ratification by any country of this agreement as such. So we will define GATT as consisting of two things. It is an international agreement which sets out the rules for conducting international trade, and it is a kind of informal structure to administer the agreement. So GATT, which from 1947 it came into being, it was consisting of basically these two things: an international agreement and an informal structure where this agreement was being administered. So there was not a kind of organization as we see today. I mean the kind of organization we call World Trade Organization. So is GATT is the same thing as WTO? No, GATT is not, WTO is not the same thing. WTO is GATT plus a lot more things. What are these things? That we will be discussing later in our discussion. So GATT is basically, WTO is basically GATT plus many things. So to give you a kind of idea, I will say WTO consists of GATT. GATT is General Agreement on Tariff and Trade. So under GATT, basically we were discussing about trade in goods. Trade in, you must have heard about the trade, I mean between nations and among nations, the trade takes place with, regarding goods also. Trade, we call it trade in goods. Then we call trade in services. These days India is very much, for quite some years now, India was very much in news regarding services. We were talking about its outsourcing and offshoring kind of services. Indian IT industry was taking lead all over the world. So kind of these kind of things come under trade in services. Then WTO also talks about intellectual property rights issues. So GATT was not taking care of all these kind of things. So there is a difference between GATT and WTO, and we will be talking about these issues later in detail. So history of GATT and WTO. History, before starting any kind of discussion on WTO, let us go into a kind of brief history and understand how GATT has taken place and how it has evolved into WTO. What were the reasons that we needed for a GATT to be converted into a WTO kind of organization? So the history of WTO as such, say, it starts with the end of the Second World War. Second World War, when there was a need for all the countries, when countries were economically very weak and there was a need for economic recovery. Given the conditions of Great Depression of 30s, you must have heard about 1930s Great Depression. So there was a need when after the Second World War, the countries were totally devastated. All over the world economies were totally devastated. There was a need for their recovery, and this devastation coupled with the kind of Great Depression of 1930s, there was a need when the UN kind of organizations, they thought that these countries need to be brought about again back to the kind of level, and to also to develop to a different level of the development. So there was a kind of need for a kind of agreement or an organization rather, where the countries under that umbrella of the organization, the countries will kind of trade among themselves based on certain rules and regulations in such a way that in the process all the countries, their development takes place, and all the countries, they go from one level of development to another level of development, which we normally consider is a higher level of development. So therefore in 1947 UN conference was held in Havana, Cuba, and a proposal was mooted where to create a ITO. ITO is International Trade Organization. This proposal came into being in 1947 at Havana, Cuba. So this ITO was supposed to be the third organization along with IMF and the WB. IMF is International Monetary Fund, and WB is the World Bank. You must have learnt in your course about the Bretton Woods institutions. Now Bretton Woods institutions, they consist of IMF and WB, International Monetary Fund and World Bank. So it was said that ITO will be a part of Bretton Woods institutions, so it will be a third organization under Bretton Woods umbrella. So the mandate, as I have told you earlier, the mandate of ITO was to regularize multilateral trading system by strong decision-making power and dispute settlement agenda. So that when countries are actually trading among themselves, it's not that you need a kind of rules and regulations, you need a kind of organization also, where if any kind of dispute arises among nations, there should be an organization that settles their dispute. So these two activities were proposed to be undertaken under this ITO. Another kind of development that took place at that time was that when this kind of proposal was being mooted for the ITO to be a kind of third organization under Bretton Woods umbrella, the lot of discussions took place, and ultimately actually no country signed this. And no country signed this, but in 1947 at the same time, while this discussion was taking place in Havana, Cuba, in Geneva, some 23 countries, they came together and they signed a kind of agreement. And this agreement was that under this agreement they will be carrying out their trade and among the nations. They will be carrying out how to trade among nations, and in the process that Havana Charter, it was said, and it was very obvious that Havana Charter that was being proposed at Cuba, it was failed, and on the other hand 23 countries signed, and there was a kind of general agreement took place that was and it was popularly called General Agreement on Tariff and Trade. So far there are some 8 rounds of general agreement on tariff and trade since 1947 has taken place. It was basically this journal under this GATT, basically the trade was taking place, it was having some kind of rules and regulations for multilateral trading for the trade in goods only. But in the Tokyo round, that was in 1973-79, for the first time some non-tariff barriers were also introduced, which were it was made a kind of binding for all the countries who signed GATT agreement, and for the first time in 1973 and 79, the kind of evolution of this GATT agreement took place, where we moved from discussing and regulating only tariff barriers to non-tariff tariff barriers as well. Then WTO was the result of the 8th round. It is popularly called Uruguay round. Uruguay round was between 1986 to 19 93. So after that, it was a kind of discussion took place where WTO, because at that time many new issues had emerged all over the world. Many new countries have wanted to be the member of this GATT agreement, and many issues relating to intellectual property rights, issues related to services, issue related to agriculture, issue related to non-agricultural agreement. Those kind of issues arrived that were making it difficult for GATT to take care of all these issues. So it was decided in 8th round, Uruguay round, that WTO, a kind of, now the situation has come to a point where we need a kind of organization. So WTO took place in 1995. Under this, as I have told you, all those areas exempt from GATT, like agricultural, trade in services and intellectual property rights, were included. It also required that attention to be given to new forms of non-tariff barriers and growing and large membership of 90 countries. As you have learnt earlier, that to begin with only 23 countries were member countries who actually signed this agreement. So membership became around 90 in 1993-95. So it was very difficult for the kind of under this GATT agreement to handle so many members of this. So depending on the need and also the requirement of that particular period, a kind of WTO emerged. So the difference between GATT and WTO. Difference between, if we discuss about difference between, as I have told you that GATT and WTO is equal to GATT plus a lot more. So what is actually the difference between GATT and WTO? To recapitulate the whole thing, we will say that GATT is a provisional contract of parties which was never ratified by the general agreement as such by any country. Now WTO is a permanent kind of organization. It has a sound legal base ratified by all member countries. Now this GATT, countries were basically contracting parties of that agreement. Under WTO we call the member countries as members. As I have explained earlier, GATT was basically talking about trade in goods, trade in commodities. WTO talks a lot more about trade in goods, services and IPs. IPs means intellectual property rights. Moreover, there are certain issues that were not coming under the purview of the GATT as such, like the trade policy review and dispute management system. These two things, they were not coming under the system of general agreement on tariff and trade. So WTO as an organization took care of these policy issues, and they were having a kind of review, trade policy review at a kind of interval of 5 years, like that. Whenever there was a kind of round discussion or meetings were taking place, ministerial meetings were taking place, they were also taking care of trade policy issues of different member countries. Similarly, whatever disputes were emerging, so under WTO, those kind of issues were also taken care. Then the major issue arises, who can be the member of WTO? Now for WTO to be a member of WTO, it was to begin with said that all the GATT members, all original members who have signed the GATT agreement, they were given the membership of WTO. Similarly, all members who were at that time the members of Uruguay round of GATT, they were also given membership of WTO automatically. Plus, it was also said that apart from the original GATT members and the members, a number of countries, for example, at the time of Uruguay round, whatever the number of countries they were the member of this, all these were given automatically the membership of WTO. Plus, it was also said that any state or country that can exceed it if it accepts the rules of WTO. Now, it was said that any country, apart from these two categories, any country can exceed the this WTO if it accepts its rules. Now, what were these rules? That for accessing WTO, any member country, it has to enter into a bilateral kind of agreements with some other member countries of WTO. Now, based on the kind of agreement that takes place and the trade takes place among those countries, based on those things, experiences, these member countries, they will vote for the country which is asking for a membership of WTO. They will vote for that and review the policies of that country. Review the policies of that country, please note this, review the policies of this country that has adopted WTO. That means the country which was actually trying to be a member of WTO, it not only has to be a kind of trading partner of already existing member of WTO, but also it has to follow the policies of WTO, and its national policies have to be somehow arranged so that it can accommodate the policies of WTO. Given these two conditions, when these conditions are there, the member countries, they will vote for that country and they will review the policies, and then the membership will be given to any other country. So, so far, what are the agreements that WTO? Now, under WTO, kind of agreements, it talks about all agreements, kind of basically agreements. The GATT was talking about agreement on tariff and trade. So WTO talks about many agreements. There are some 60 agreements that have taken place so far under the umbrella of WTO. But major among these are GATT as such. GATT agreement, it is about general agreement on tariff and trade, very much similar to GATT. Then there is GATS. GATT says that agreement on services. Negotiations are on to expand its scope to potentially cover all services and also open it to TNCs, transnational corporations, and privatization. Then another major agreement that was signed under GATS was TRIPS. TRIPS includes rules on patents, rights and trademarks. So you must have heard about this intellectual property rights and all that. These kind of things come under this agreement, TRIPS and TRIMS. Trade related investment measures which dictate that government can and cannot do anything in regulating foreign investment. It can and cannot. Depending on the kind of rules that WTO has, it can decide, it cannot decide, depending on whatever WTO agreement is saying regarding particular commodities. Then there is SPS. SPS is sanitary and photosanitary standards. That is agreement on the application of sanitary and photosanitary standards, sets the constraints on government. Relating to these kind of standards are basically related to food safety, animal and plant health. Another agreement that has been signed under WTO is FSA. FSA is Financial Services Agreement. This is to remove obstacles in the free flow of financial services across countries. So for finance and capital, the free movement of these things, that is being taken care by this particular agreement. Then there is an agreement which is AOA, that is Agreement on Agriculture. So this sets the rules on the international food trade and restricts domestic agricultural policy, including protection against dumping, protection for small scale farmers. So these kind of issues are being taken care by this agreement on popularly called AOA, that is Agreement on Agriculture. Then another agreement is ASCM. ASCM is Agreement on Subsidies and Countervailing Measures. ASCM, it sets the limits on what government may or may not subside, but contains loopholes favoring wealthy countries. Basically, the WTO rules, it is said that basically WTO rules are favoring somewhere developed countries, and it is regarding subsidies, whether it is agriculture, whether whatever agreements, it is somehow it has a bias towards developed countries, and that is the basic issue that these developing countries are fighting versus developed countries. So the ASCM, that this particular agreement was regarding that subsidies that are taking place, the subsidies being given to farmers and all in developed countries and developing countries, taking care of those kind of issues. Then there is another agreement, which is agreement on technical barriers to trade. Now this technical barriers to trade, this talks about the national regulations, national regulations that interfere with the trade. Interfere with the trade means it interferes with the free flow of trade among nations. So this kind of agreement, that this is called technical barriers to trade. So under this agreement only, the trade facilitation, those kind of issues are being taken care, that member countries, they have to change their national regulations so that the trade facilitation takes place, in order to facilitate the trade among nations, so that free flow of goods and services takes place. For that purpose, this agreement has been signed by many member countries. Then another major agreement is agreement on government procurement, that is AGP, agreement on government procurement. This particular agreement, it sets the limits on government purchasing, including domestic content or community development requirements. So this particular these are the major agreements that have been signed under WTO by many member countries. Now, what are the principles? The many member countries that they have signed about WTO agreements, they have ratified those things, but the WTO has some trading kind of rules, principles under which in general the WTO trading, the trading under WTO takes place, multilateral kind of trading. So what are those principles? Principles are: trading system should operate without discrimination. I have already explained to you that trading system, under WTO, any country cannot discriminate against any country based on if the country is a member of WTO. So the particular clauses under which WTO talks about, WTO gives this kind of regulations and rules are MFN and national treatment, most favored nation and national treatment. These are the two clauses under which WTO says that all the member countries, among all the member countries, the trade should take place without any discrimination. Now, what is this MFN and national treatment? Now, most favored nation, this particular clause of WTO, it talks about that if a member country is trading with another country, then it cannot differentiate whether it is regarding tariffs or regarding any kind of barriers. It cannot differentiate among all the countries with whom it is trading. Country A, B, C, D, whatever number of countries, it has to treat all the trading partners equally. Now, what is this national treatment? Under this clause, the WTO says that national treatment, once a country trades with another country, it imports certain kind of commodities to its own country, then once the commodity comes inside the country, domestic, it has to be treated like any other domestic commodity. It cannot be given a special kind of treatment. So once the commodities are being imported, same kind of rules, regulations, tariffs, taxes, quotas, whatever it is applying to domestic commodities, that will apply to any commodity which is being imported also. So with these two clauses, the WTO ensures that the trading system should operate without any kind of discrimination. Then WTO also says that it is not that overnight the trading system should be free and free flow kind of things. It should be slowly moving towards to become free over a period of time. It means that the WTO sets kind of time limits on all the countries that within this kind of period or within this time frame, you have to reduce your tariffs and all that from whatever level at present level, whatever level you have, to a level where it becomes possible for any country or for trade to take place freely and smoothly. Another principle for WTO is that tariff and non-tariff barriers should come down over time. So not only that the trade should flow smoothly, that barriers to trade should also come down over time. Then predictability. This is another principle of WTO. This refers to the need to ensure foreign companies, investors and governments that trade barriers will not be raised arbitrarily and that all trade policies are transparent. So WTO does not talk about only that there should not be trade barriers. It also talks about that there should be a kind of arbitrarily some trade policies should not be adopted by any country, or whatever is being adopted, that the country or the member countries should be transparent about whatever it is, so that easily and predictably the trade can take place. The one country knows about the rules and regulations, tariffs and non-tariffs, all those things about the other member country with which it is intended to trade. Then it is another principle is that the trade system should be competitive. Trading system should be competitive by discouraging unfair practices like subsidizing exports and dumping practices. That is, you cannot adhere to dumping practices. Dumping, all of you must be aware of this dumping. Dumping is that you normally, when a trade among countries take place, a country which is exporting its commodities to another country at a lower price, that is called dumping of goods, and it is that's why under WTO system anti-dumping policies are being followed. Similarly, that you cannot subsidize your exports, that also is taken care under WTO. WTO follows that kind of principle, and it in general says that the trading system should be competitive enough. Then another principle is that all countries, it requires that, because it is talking about transparency, it is talking about free flow of goods, it is talking about predictability, it's talking about all possible good things that when the trade among countries are taking place multilateral, under the multilateral trading system, that all countries are treated equally. But at the same time, under WTO, it is also said that not only all countries will be treated equally, it also takes care of less developed countries that need special treatment. Now, what is this special treatment, that we will discuss later, that what kind of special treatment with less developed countries are being offered. Then WTO also, another principle of WTO is that it talks about that quotas should be prohibited. Quotas, it does not give any preference to quotas, rather it says that quotas should be prohibited, and only tariffs, it talks about only tariffs. to protect the domestic industry. So you can follow a kind of policy where you have a kind of a tariff, the percentage of tariff on your commodities and all that, to protect your domestic industry. But WTO strongly says that the quotas should be prohibited. Then next issue that comes under this is that how do WTO affects our lives? WTO has affected our lives in many ways. It has not only created kind of it has turned the world trading system in such a way that wherever you are, whichever part of the country you are getting affected, and the kind of effects, kind of impact WTO rules and regulations are having on your life, it is creating a kind of insecurity among, we will call it rather insecurities created by WTO among the people of particularly of developing countries. So what are these insecurities? These are largely, you can define economic insecurity, political insecurity, social insecurity, ecological insecurity, peace insecurity, food insecurity, human insecurity. So if you go through this list of insecurities, you will find the each and every aspect of life WTO is having a kind of impact on us. So what is economic insecurity? Economic insecurity is that WTO does not say anything about creating jobs. Rather, it limits the government's ability to do so. When it says that you have to follow the WTO's rules and regulations and you have to change your national policies accordingly, so it some ways restricts the member governments' ability to do so, those kind of to follow those kind of policies where it can create jobs for people. And in the process it favors TNCs. When it is talking about transparency, when it's talking about predictability of rules and regulations, it is favoring TNCs, and TNCs are taking that kind of leverage from these rules of WTO, that they are at a favorable position, and the general public of member countries are normally a kind of economic insecurity they are having. Similarly, there is political insecurity. Political insecurity, as I have explained to you earlier, that given that MFN and NT clauses, most favored nation and national treatment kind of clauses, TNCs are again taking advantage, and they are putting pressures on the national governments to follow WTO rules for the free flow of operations, and it is making rules for the global economy, and in a way kind of national role of national governments is diminishing. So it is a kind of what you call political insecurity is also being created by WTO. Then there is social insecurity. Social insecurity is that by favoring policies like privatization of public services. Under WTO, social insecurities are created when it follows policies like privatization of public services like health, education, drinking water. So the privatization of these things under WTO rules and under the particular agreement of GATS, so it creates a kind of insecurity, social insecurity among the people. Then there is ecological insecurity. Ecological insecurity is that many transnational corporations are coming to the developing countries under the agreement of WTO. So many these transnational corporations, the kind of technologies they are using, the kind of techniques they are using, they are kind of creating environmental hazards in developing countries. So with that the people in the developing countries are really getting affected, and they are anxious about their ecological future, and that is a kind of this whole thing has a kind of impact, and it is a chain kind of effect, that once you have economic insecurity, political insecurity, social insecurity, ecological insecurity, it leads to the other kind of insecurities also. Your peace is disturbed. This is peace insecurity. That's a kind of encouraging militarism, arms race deals, that creates insecurities among people. So despite that we were thinking that there is an end of Cold War and there is a collapse of Berlin Wall, we see that still all over the world under WTO the transnational corporations are trading for this arms among the in the developing countries. Similarly, there's a food insecurity. Now, food insecurity is that, again, you must have heard about many farmers, they committing suicide in India, all over India, and these kind of mishappenings are taking place in developing countries because of these WTO rules, where WTO is favoring transnational corporations, where transnational corporations are bringing out all kind of those kind of agribusiness corporations, those kind of seeds and fertilizers and all those kind of things which are expensive and being given at credit to the farmers, and ultimately farmers are under the kind of credit where they are not able to pay, and they are into a kind of debt trap. And this is leading to all kind of insecurity among the people of developing countries particularly. Then there is human insecurity. WTO rules are also creating kind of human insecurity among people, because as global economy is expanding, laborers and human rights violation is also taking place. Now, because under the WTO, it does not take care of any human rights issues. It does not take care of any human rights standards of UN Human Rights Commission and ILO, and as a result, TNCs take advantage of WTO's trade and investment rules, and they try to exploit workers also. Now, so because of these insecurities, the WTO has been criticized everywhere, especially in developing countries, and the criticism is around the particular points is around kind of that it is basically fundamentally WTO is undemocratic and undermines local decision making and national sovereignty. Similarly, WTO serves the interests of TNCs. You must have seen from the earlier discussion that all its policies are for TNCs. It also encourages privatization of essential services, and that's why it is being criticized. It increases the inequality, hunger and poverty, and that's why it is the kind of insecurity it creates. It creates inequality, hunger, poverty, especially in developing countries, and that's how the whole WTO as such is being criticized all over the country, and it is destroying environment. Now, from Doha to Hong Kong, issues for South Asia. What are the issues? Doha round that took place in 2001, and for the first time in 2001, it was a breakthrough under WTO when we were talking about DDA. DDA is Doha Development Round. So basically, it was taking out development issues. The decision was taken that it will talk about development issues, and because this round was the kind of a decision was taken at that time, and that in 2001 this was adopted. 2003 at Cancun they will review that DDA, and this DDA round will culminate at Hong Kong in 2005. And therefore, a kind of package was adopted, and the main issues were under this DDA was basically to discuss the achievements that was supposed to be taken care was agriculture issue, non-agriculture market access issue, services, trade facilitation and development dimension. So it was realized that developing countries, including those in South Asia, have a high stake in the successful completion of this conference. So main issues of discussion were agriculture, export competition, NAMA, services, trade facilitation and development dimension. So basically under this we will be, maybe in some other session we will be talking about these issues in detail. So it's just to end the issue, the basic issue of contention under developing countries and developed countries were to talk about that agriculture, whether it is subsidy, whether it is tariff or export competition, non-agriculture market access, services, trade facilitation and development dimension. With that I end this particular session, and maybe we will discuss about these issues in detail in some other session. So if you have any questions, please mail me at mbala@ignou.ac.in. Thank you.